Speaker then, Catherine Connolly, 10 minutes.
Welcome back, Mr. Quinn and Mr. Dunyan. And it's quite unfortunate that we're here discussing conflicts of interest, which seems to take up an extraordinary amount of time, notwithstanding all the codes of governance and ethics. It's truly shocking that the amount of time is taken up. So just specifically, Mr. McHenry, I'm a little confused in relation to an event, a meeting and the purpose of it. So if I'm wrong, you just correct me. You went to a meeting on an invitation through a phone call from Mr. Tig, what's his second name? Daly, Mr. Tig Daly. Is that correct?
Yes.
He phoned you?
I believe the first communication was a phone call, yes.
Was there a second one?
I believe there was an email sent to me formally inviting me to speak.
Okay. And have you that email with you?
No.
Okay, what did that email say?
Wait, it says that we invite you as financial, and it was addressed to BDO. It was in your capacity.
No. Just tell me what have you got it with you?
No,
okay.
I don't.
What did it say to you?
What it says is we are inviting you to speak at an event as a financial advisor to the sector. And I don't know the exact verbatim.
Well, that's okay, and I'm not going to hold you to the exact verbatim, but you're using the word event. So Are you sticking with that? You were invited to an event, and you'll have an email to show us that. I am sure that I did receive an email which was an invitation to speak at the event. To an event. What was the title of the event?
I think it was maybe a consultation event or a consultation meeting. I believe it was one or the other.
Mr. McHenry, this meeting was 2 years ago, and the Chair has already pointed out that you've given a detailed recollection.
Yeah.
And you're changing from an event to a meeting. What was the purpose of you attending that meeting?
It was to speak about the Fair Deal scheme in my professional experience and professional capacity. That's exactly what the purpose.
That's set out somewhere, is it, in an email?
That was exactly what the invitation was to me, was to speak.
Have you a copy of that email somewhere?
I don't have it with me, no.
But it is somewhere, is it?
Yes. I would have.
So that would be very helpful. Okay. Next thing that would be very helpful. Were you told about confidentiality when you went into that meeting?
I joined the meeting and there was reference. I know that Evershed's solicitors spoke about.
I'm just going to stop you now, just because we've.
That's okay.
I, as chairman, have ruled there be no reference to the document produced
but I'm just referring
by the advisor because of legal privileges on it. But without reference to the document or the name of the legal advisor, please proceed.
I apologise. Sorry, Deputy, can Justin and I fully understand what you're.
You went along to this meeting.
Yes.
And you've told us now you were late and you were early leaving. So when you went along to that meeting, did they say, "You're very welcome, Mr. McHenry, and this is a private, confidential meeting," or what were you told? So
I went along to the meeting. I wasn't scheduled to join the meeting.
Did you hear my question?
From the start.
No. When you joined the meeting,
yes.
Sorry, you weren't scheduled to join the meeting. I beg your pardon now. You weren't scheduled to join the meeting?
I believe the meeting had, and I believe it was scheduled that the meeting commenced before I joined. I was invited into the meeting. If I can explain to you, the attendees were in situ.
I understood you were late or you were returning.
No, I came from the UK, but as I believe that my invitation was after the other attendees were already in situ.
Mr. McHenry, I'd really like to get to the basis of my questions. I can't get beyond. Sorry, no. I can't. You've total recollection of what you said. But your recollection in relation to were you late as to why?
No, I wasn't. I was on time. I'd come from the UK, and the allotted time for me to join the meeting was after the meeting was scheduled to commence.
What time was that?
I believe that the invitation to the attendees was at 9:30, and I joined, I think, at about 10:15.
What time did you leave?
And I left at about shortly after 12 noon.
And you've no contemporaneous notes of that meeting?
No.
And nobody came back to you Mr. Daly, or
I
anybody
never
in relation?
I never received until I saw them last week from circulation here. No, because I wasn't an attendee. I was a guest.
You were a guest. And so, have you any difficulty in release? You've seen the minutes of this famous meeting that's privileged. You've seen.
I have seen the minutes.
And have you any difficulty with those minutes? With your?
Yes.
Oh, you have.
I think I
one
said.
One specific item, you said, wasn't it? Just one specific item.
In particular, I have a difficulty with certain words that are used inside them.
Yeah, about backing down. They always back down.
No, I believe that I have absolutely, and I wouldn't use the word, threaten the National Treatment Party. What I did, and I know exactly what I said, which is there is an appeals process. So it goes from...
No. Wait, sorry now. You believe you were brought in late, you believe you were brought in as a guest, and you believe you were brought in to advise on financial affairs. Is that right?
I was invited to speak on the Fair Deal scheme, and
you have an email somewhere that you're going to produce.
I will.
Very good. That's very good. And so then, in relation to this, you were there in a philanthropic capacity, were you?
I was there. I think I outlined that. I do it to a lot. I speak at a lot.
Were you there in a philanthropic capacity?
I was there. I was unpaid. Yes.
Unpaid, and you're nothing to get out of it, nothing to gain out of it.
I generate data, and I'm an advisor in the sector.
Tell me what you hope to get out of that meeting.
I hope to disseminate the information which we were just after producing in the Nursing Homes Ireland survey.
Was that recorded somewhere with the minutes that you read of this famous meeting? The survey, is that recorded in the minutes that you read, that you were there in relation to that survey?
If I can outline to you, when I spoke about my experience about the finances of the sector, for instance, when I referred to the labour costs and labour, these are items that we would assess in the nursing home survey.
When you read the minutes of the famous meeting that's privileged and confidential, did you see that you referred to your research, and that was the reason you were there given this research?
Well, when I talked about the finances in the sector, yes, because they're the most up to date.
Did you see that recorded, that Mr. McHenry is here talking about the research that his company... No. You didn't see that recorded? Okay. How many other meetings have you attended with... similar to the meeting you attended on that day?
I spoke to, I believe in 2015, I spoke to 6 forums where I was unpaid and where I spoke about the industry, the finances of the nursing home sector.
Have you gone to meetings organised by Nursing Home Ireland?
Pardon me?
Have you gone to meetings organised by Nursing Homes Ireland?
I think that was, I have to say, I think that was the only one in recent times.
Okay. In relation to your role as chairperson of HIQA, what do you understand your role to be?
My role is a non-executive role, and it is to chair the board of the authority.
Has the board met since this became public in the papers? Why hasn't it?
It hasn't met, but we will be meeting.
Why hasn't the board met since this very serious issue? Whether it's correct or incorrect, we don't know, but what was reported in the paper, you accept it's very serious? Why hasn't a board meeting been called?
A board meeting will be called. A board meeting is scheduled for this day week.
No. My question was, why hasn't a board meeting been called?
It hasn't. It just hasn't, Deputy.
So did no board member believe that this was sufficiently serious to call an emergency meeting, leaving yourself out of it?
No.
No. Okay. And did you declare that you attended this meeting at any board meeting?
No, I didn't. No. But I declared.
Listen to my questions, just. Yeah. Did you declare that you attended this meeting at any of the board meetings? No. And you have a reason for that. You didn't see a conflict of interest.
Exactly.
Okay. I know you make that very clearly. And I accept that you made that clear when you attended your first meeting that we've got the minutes on. Did any board member question you on what you declared on that date? On page 2, it's recorded conflict of interest. Nobody seems to have... Could they actually thank you for your openness, I think? To thank the chairperson for the declaration. There was no discussion ever of how that conflict of interest might materialise or how they would handle it?
No, I gave a full account.
Yeah, no, listen to me.
But there
vote?
was.
Where is that recorded?
It is recorded that the following measures discuss the Deputy Chairperson and the CEO, absent himself from any discussion of the matter. The Deputy Chairperson will chair any such instances should they arise, and other personnel within BDO will be allocated responsibility for the client.
I see that. Did that ever happen at any subsequent board meeting?
At one.
Which one?
At a recent meeting in July,
yes.
I saw an item which was for information from the chairman, from the chief executive. It was in his report. He was reporting on an item which had happened. I saw a reference to a client of BDO which I recognised. Yeah. I declared it, and I asked the deputy chairperson, should the matter come up for discussion, that I would recuse myself, and that I asked her to chair the meeting in that regard.
All right.
If I can just explain, the matter didn't come up for discussion, and therefore I didn't recuse myself because it didn't come up. It was a matter that was in the Chief Executive's report for information. But I did declare it, and I did ask the Deputy Chair to step in should it come up.
Okay. Going back to the minutes that are privileged, have you any difficulty in publishing those minutes subject to what you're saying is incorrect? Have you any difficulty waiving your privilege in relation to those? You were there.
I certainly have an issue with some of the content inside in the minutes.
I understand so far now from all the questions that have been asked, I understood you had one difficulty.
I have one in particular. I do believe that it would have been helpful had there been a sequence of when I joined the meeting and when I left the meeting. I think that would have been useful. It would have been useful. It would have been useful for me. But so there are aspects, quite frankly, Deputy.
So there's more than one difficulty.
Well, I think the minutes are not what I would normally consider to be.
Okay, I accept that, and it doesn't accurately reflect your participation. Would that be correct?
I can absolutely say to you emphatically that I did not use the word, and I wouldn't use the word.
Listen to me. Listen, that's already been discussed.
Yes. So it doesn't accurately reflect.
It doesn't accurately. Now, have you a difficulty saying publishing them? Have you difficulty waiving your privilege on them?
I don't know whether I have.
You might reflect on
Pardon me?
Would you have a role in that matter?
No, I don't think I have the power. I don't know.
Well, that's okay.
If you don't have an issue.
That's okay.
I'm not. I don't know actually whether I have.
This is my difficulty now. You're chair of HIQA, and I really don't want to put you in a spot in relation to privilege. That's something you have to reflect on, and possibly you don't have a role in it because you're an invited guest. However, you're head of HIQA, and you're attending a meeting. According to yourself, the subsequent minutes are inaccurate. It's not clear what the criteria are for your attendance. You can't quite remember whether it was an email or not, and so on. So just let me know. You're in the capacity as chair of HIQA, on reflection and looking back at that type of meeting, where you don't see minutes until 2 years later. Would you think that's an appropriate way for you to attend a meeting?
I believe, Deputy, I have always Did
you hear my question?
I did.
Good. Will you answer my question?
I have the most forthright explanation as to my role.
Looking back on that meeting, on reflection, do you think, given the way the minutes have been written and privilege and so on, do you think that was an appropriate role for you as chair of HIQA?
I was a guest. I had no control over what happened or how the minutes were. I was not an attendee. I wasn't there in an organising capacity around that event. I was a guest. I spoke and I left.
I'm finished, Mr. McHenry. So you can understand because the other speakers have already said the minutes. But if you're down, I've asked you what difficulties you had with the minutes, and they were limited. They were limited to specific words that were said or not said. But say if you're down as an attendee at that meeting, would that be wrong?
I was a guest.
Sorry, did you listen to my question? If you are down as an attendee, would that be incorrect?
I think it would be fair to say I was an attendee for part of the meeting. For albeit a lot of the meeting, but not all of the meeting.
You were a guest, you were an attendee, you don't know. Okay. My final question. In your role as chairperson, you have a leadership role, have you not?
Yes.
And you have managing key relationships with the Minister for Health, and you have to judge the performance and evaluate the CEO, and you also manage relationships with key external parties. Who would they be?
Well, the key, predominantly, the key external parties would be, I am obviously to come in here in front of the houses of the Oireachtas.
Would the National Treatment Purchase Fund be one of
No,
them?
there isn't interaction.
No, would National Treatment Purchase Fund be one of those external parties?
Okay. Two speakers to get in, and the voting time is coming up shortly.
I think that is an important thing.
Sorry,
if I can,
sorry, I finished.
I can say, Chairman, that is a very important. There is no, and I think it's important for the committee to know, there is no mandate for the chairman of HIQA to have interactions with the National Treatment Purchase Fund.
Okay, I'm Deputy Murphy and